If you had to pick the most beautiful song in the Xenoblade franchise, which one would you pick? I know, a really loaded question, because there's just tons of those in the games, but for me personally, it would most likely be Drifting Soul, a song about finding yourself, one of the many themes of the actual game. Drifting Soul is both a sad song but also a really uplifting one, even if it may not sound like one at all. You could show it to your parents and they would probably think, damn, are we gonna have to play this at your funeral? And in a way it makes for a pretty good one, but no kid should ever die before their parents for the sake of their heart, so stay with us, okay? The game itself uses it at four key moments, one that seems extremely hopeless, one that's kinda a mix because despite saving the world, it isn't really a pretty win, and two that inspire hope. That's what the song is about, just like the whole game actually. It's about a bunch of people who are trying to find their place in this beautiful world of Always, regardless of how bleak the state of it is, never giving in to the despair that we all have in the back of our head sometimes. Keep moving on till we finally are at a point where we are satisfied with ourselves. First, it gets used in the scene where the party gets their butts kicked against Malus and Actors, getting totally destroyed and things are not looking well, with the focus of it mostly on Nia because with her blade form they could have maybe done something here and didn't have Vandam die, but she's too afraid to reveal it yet, and the song with its lyrics fits it. Shortly after, Mythra also gets introduced. Secondly, it's used in Nia's transformation scene, where she finally shows the rest of the party that she's a flesh eater, an uplifting moment that turns the tides of the battle. This time it's the violent version of the song though, without the lyrics. Thirdly, it's used in the middle cutscene of the final boss while you kinda kick his ass, showing you that there's always a way forward, and it's used in an uplifting way because, well, you're basically saving the world, this time without anything too bad happening. Here it also uses the lyrics version again. And lastly, it's used in the final cutscene of Torna, where Mythra fights against Malus and things are all kinds of messed up, despite saving the world. Technically, it's the first time the song is used since it's 500 years in the past, but you know, I've seen people say the song is unfitting for the first and this scene, but I think the song perfectly fits them, because despite eventually winning those two fights, they come at such heavy losses that they barely feel like it's a glorious battle that you have just won. And again, in the Torna scene, it's only the instrumental version that plays. There was also always the question in the womb, who does the song talk about? Is it even talking about a specific person, or is it about people in general? Something like this is always up to your own views and how you see it, unless the maker of it just straight up tells you who it was for. Is it for Pyra, Mythra, Nia? Nowadays, with Xenoblade 3, it's kinda not so up in the air anymore because Nia mostly yoinked it for herself. The leitmotif of it can be heard in the Cloud Keeps theme, and they also turned it into a battle theme when you got her in your party. So there's no real doubt about it, but I do think the song fits all three of them to a T, to a degree. Songs can be seen in so many different ways when you look at the lyrics, and the nice thing is you can have your very own vision of it, and it's not wrong. Unless you say something really wrong about them, I guess. So I wanted to look at the lyrics and analyze them a bit to see, hey, does this fit this character the most, or that one? Maybe both? Does it even matter?
Among the mist, I see a stretching path reaches out so far beyond what I can see. How far would I be walking till I reach the end of a path that's to be seen?
Pretty general lyrics, since they could just apply to about anyone in Xenoblade, in any video game, in our own lives, unless you have a totally clear goal to work towards. And even then, you don't know what's coming after when you reached it. What will our lives be in 20 years? What happens after I did this or that? Life is really just a stretching path that will end when we end. I don't think the lyrics mean that kind of end though, just a general goal that they lack. Which mostly goes for Nia. She's just on the run for being a wanted criminal. The days passing by while living in anxiety of being found. The only goal is to survive, which by our own standards of society would be a pretty sad goal. It's a necessary goal, but many people would also want to strive for more. Something more clear, which would also clear the path a bit more if you actually know what you're looking towards.
I would keep thinking, questioning to myself, why do I have to walk this path? Oh, why? I can't see
Again, this verse seems a bit more Nia-focused, but also feels it was made for Pyra and Mythra. Why is all of this happening to them? All three of them were basically forced onto their paths. Nia never wanted to become a flesh eater and was forced to become one against her own will. Mythra was born with such a heavy burden to basically save the world, which puts this intense pressure onto you, and Pyra was born out of a coping mechanism and had to deal with Mythra's sorrows without ever really living out her own life so far. None of them had a choice in any of these things. It's not like they were the ones putting themselves into bad positions while choosing bad choices. Their lives were basically handed to them and got told to do these things without leaving them a choice. It left all of them empty, just being strung along with what they have to do instead of being themselves and being allowed to do their own choices. Why would I want to walk this path when it wasn't really the one I chose for myself?
So tell me why I'm here and what's the reason I am here today. If I recall, it was you wished that I would stay. No matter how much wind will blow against me, I will keep on. I will keep moving on to find the answer to. I'm lost in search for you.
This is the refrain or chorus of the song. I even googled what the actual difference between those two things are, and most people say they're pretty much the same. In short, it's the part of a song that gets repeated after a verse or more. It seems fairly simple to say that this is about Wax, but I would also like to think it's about their corresponding friend that was always around them. In Nia's case it would be Dromark, and in Pyra's and Mythra's case it would be each other, because they were always by each other's side, so they never had to actually be totally alone, and gave each other the tiny little push that they needed to still continue, even if they were broken inside. If you see it this way, the last line also makes a bit more sense. I'm lost in search for you. Wouldn't really make sense if they already found Wax. I know you shouldn't take lyrics so by the actual words. Mostly they're always written to be a bit more obtuse in a way, to leave room to make you wonder what they actually mean. It doesn't have to totally line up with what actually happens in the game at a certain point. It's meant to be a bit more bendable. They're not meant to be a true retelling of the actual story, but a rewrite of their feelings. So I personally would see it as a mix, but obviously if you had to pick a person who it is about, it totally would be Rex, because he just accepts them so easily and wants them in their party. Doesn't matter what they have done before. You're the legendary Aegis who has so much power it can fuck over the world if that power falls into your one hands. Who cares? I will just see you as a normal girl with a bit more power in her arms. You are a wanted criminal kitty cat, damn, that's cool. How about you join us because you got a nice accent and you are funny? It's the first time any of them really truly feel accepted regardless of their past and what they are, finally giving them a glimpse of hope to keep on going, even if it's a hard path to take.
I'm tired from the constant carry on, shouting that I can't see a way ahead. The words would fill the midst so gently in the air, and it melts as time just passes by.
Pretty general lyrics again that are also easy to know what they mean. Nobody wants to walk the kind of path that shows you nothing in front, because that's scary and you don't want to end up in Silent Hill. We all want to know what's up sometimes. Seeing a path can give you hope that this path leads to something good, but if you can't see it, then you're scared to walk it. But Rex's words slowly opens up their path and lets them see it, which goes for all three of our heroines. With each word, they slowly warm up more and more, the fog clearing up and making it a nice bright early spring day. Yay, I like those. Fog is pretty scary, especially if you have to drive a car, which I can't because I don't have a driver's license.
When I look back, there is no trace of my path. I cannot find my way to the past, and it's just too late. Time has elapsed, there's only now that goes on here on out. My eyes see ahead.
This again could relate to either of these three girls, especially for Pyra since she doesn't really have her own past. All she had in those 500 years was basically Mythra telling her stories about what happened back then, and even that past is something Mythra would rather not think about, something that could relate to her with the time has elapsed line. She wanted to run from the past, instead of moving on with it, even though you can't escape from it. I think that's one of the saddest things about her. She saved the world, even if it came with really personal losses to her, but at the same time there was no one trying to save her. Adam just went along with her wish of getting sealed away instead of trying to change her mind about it. We don't fully have the full story of how they all came to the conclusion that it would be the best thing to do, but with someone like Rex it never would have happened. And again, it also relates to Nia, since everything that tied her to her own past is also gone, except for Dwalmart. She has no more family and is looking for a place to belong. If you played the game, you know her backstory, but I will shortly talk a bit about that later on at another point where it matters a bit more. They don't really have any personal ties to their pasts anymore and would rather move on from it, having a few nice and happy memories, but the amount of sad memories is bigger. It's finally time for them to accept it's part of them instead of trying to run from it.
When you stop and look ahead and face up to the blue above, the Jacob's ladder will come down and check me out. If I could climb up to the top, would you be waiting at the top? Well, it means I search no more.
In the book of Genesis, the Jacob's ladder is a ladder that angels use to go to heaven and down to earth. There's many different interpretations about what it actually means, like the angels representing our souls and all that. Basically, it's a connection between our earth and heaven, something we all want to reach after we pass on, or you can also go to hell if you want to. I'm not a really religious person, but it feels nice to believe in things like that, because death is scary, and if it helps people to cope with the fact that we will all die one day, there's nothing wrong with it. Like when I visited the graveyard with my parents to put some new flowers onto the grave of a relative, they always told me he's watching over us from the heaven, and I think that's a nice sentiment to have, even if you're not religious. In short, the Jacob's ladder in its way symbolizes suicide for me, the wish to pass on without much trouble, just having to walk up this ladder. This part fits Pyra and Mythra way more than Nia, because we know they wanted to die as their wish when they finally reached Elysium, before Rex and also the rest of the cast changed their mind luckily. So they want to go to heaven, finally leaving the hard life behind them, because for them there was just nothing there. It seems so hopeless to them that they wished for death. The second part of it does look like they long for something though, a person who accepts them for who they are, which turned out to be Rex. But what if it doesn't have to be a person? It could be about a feeling like salvation for Mythra, having her mind finally be at rest and in peace. It's also written to me in such a way that they already give up on the idea of finding something like this normally, and see death as the only way to achieve this, because the lyrics wonder about if that's what they will find if they climb up the ladder. What if death wouldn't give them this salvation though? Wondering if it's really the right choice to make, since it's still really uncertain. Wouldn't it be better to keep on living and holding on to that last piece of hope? Nia always seemed like the kind of person that would never ever consider something such as suicide, regardless of how bleak things could get, moving on even if she hates it, but never even thinking about the worst case scenario. Drifting from day to day to her still feels better than having it to end. Maybe also out of guilt, because she still feels she has to keep on living for the sake of her dead sister that wasn't really her real sister, that she had to eat after she passed on, having her live on through her in that way, not wanting her to die again because Nia is the only person in the world still that knows she existed really, refusing to let that name get erased from the world. The Jacob's ladder could also symbolize the world tree, since it's their connection to heaven in a way, and Elysium is supposed to be paradise, so it would make them happy if they reached it, right? Since that's what a paradise should be, fulfilling everyone's dream. I think it's also a valid way to see it.
I'll try and reach for the ladder that's there. Far away the distance, I hear the voices. Was this what I've expected? Don't even know. Is this the real me I've longed for? Wish that was the case.
So full of despair, they try to reach for the ladder, but the voices give them doubt, which I would think are the voices of the cast who don't want them to be gone. They reveal they wanted to die at the scene where the whole party tries to rescue them, and that's the point where they really finally realize, hey, we are in good hands, look at them, they're doing this for our sake. They're still clinging a tiny bit onto that ladder before they truly let go of it, which is symbolized by the next verse.
I know I'll let go of the ladder that's there. I'll start walking from this point on. I'm not here at all. I don't exist here at all. I gotta search for me. I wish that I'd find myself soon. I need to find myself,
If we take the Jacob's ladder symbolizes suicide theory and the wish to die, they let go of it because they realize, yeah, life can suck, but that's how it is sometimes. There will always be people to cheer you on while you try to figure things out. There's no magical cure where you suddenly know exactly what you want in life and how to achieve it. It's a day-by-day thing. Some suck, some are fun. Some days you will struggle. Some days you will feel like the king or queen of the world. There is no real answer to the question of who you are. You are you, and that you can change constantly, even if you don't realize it. You will constantly be on the search for yourself, but that's just how I see it. Maybe you see it differently. It's a bit like the eternal question of what is the point of life. There is no definitive answer. Back to the lyrics though, if we take them a bit more by the words. If we use the Elysium theory, it could mean, hey, I reached paradise, but I didn't find myself here. Because despite magic existing in this world, you can't just magically erase your problems with something such as this. Elysium was once a paradise, but no more. But even if it was still paradise, how could it have fixed me? Santa Claus is not real, sadly. They all have to give up on this Elysium dream fixing their problems. I gotta let go of this way of thinking that reaching some magical place could easily fix everything. They give up on this childish dream of Elysium being the answer to all of the problems. These lyrics towards the end also would fit Nia and Pyra the most. We know Mythra is kinda struggling with her self-image too, because she wishes she could actually cook and all that, so Pyra in a way is everything she wishes she could be too, but she's her own character, just being way too afraid of her own power. The Mythra we see in Torna is basically the same Mythra we see in the normal game. But now imagine you're Pyra and you were mostly created to be able to cope with the pain of losing your loved ones, those that you hurt yourself, and all your character traits stem from your other you pushing those ideals onto you in a way. Pyra never blames Mythra for it, but in a way it would still mess with your brain, that you shouldn't really exist and that you mostly exist because of a coping mechanism. If this happened to you, your mind would also be full of doubts about who you actually are. Are you really your own person, or are you the way you are because of the other you? Things like that. With Nia, it's a tiny bit more simple, but still not that simple. She was basically taught to act as the daughter of a lord, because she had to eat his real daughter for her to kinda live on through Nia. And we all know her real personality is pretty damn far from being the daughter of such an influential person, being bratty and swearing all the time instead of being ladylike. She was being forced to act in a totally different way, and it obviously had a big impact on her too. So all of them struggle with their self-image and how they got to the point where they are. Did I become this way because of myself or because of others? Is this me really me? Something even me and you may struggle with sometimes. I think the song ends too open-ended because it really is something that can't be found because it constantly changes. Even if you're satisfied with yourself, you will always be searching for it. Despite all of the girls having found a reason to live, they also have to keep searching for themselves, because they don't just want to live for Wax, but also for themselves. He helps them on their path, but they also still have to walk it anyways, just with way more support now. In general, I think that the beauty of Xenoblade 2 is themed to a degree. It doesn't give you any wishy-washy pretend answers to life. It gives you a general, positive outlook on life, but it doesn't pretend it has the answers on how to create a peaceful world and things like that. Instead it just says, you know what, there will always be good people, but also bad people. For one thing to exist, the other also has to exist. But maybe that's a topic for another day. In the end, it's just a beautiful song where it doesn't really matter who it is about because it could belong to all of us. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and maybe if you totally disagree with me about how I see the lyrics, you can tell me about it in the comments if you want to. With that said, have a good day, a good night, or whatever fits your time zone. Bye bye.